Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
Someone has rightly said, "You are not rich until you have something for which you paid no money." Now you think about that for just a minute. Real prosperity. He says, this person, whoever said it, is only happens when you have something for which you had no money given. That's fascinating. Our topic today is real prosperity. What does it mean to be rich? Who are the rich people of the world? And really, for us today, I want to ask you, are you rich? Do you know that you are a rich person? Well, I guess it will depend upon how you might define being rich. Another person said, riches can be stolen, but richness cannot be. I like that one too. The things that we have that the world might identify that say that is why you are rich can be taken away. But the richness of your character, the richness of your nature, the richness of life cannot be taken away from you. It cannot be stolen against your will. It can be given up. You can destroy it. You can mess it up. But nobody can take it from you. The richness of life. By and large, I think most people in this room, most people online probably have a richness of life. But I think it is also possible that there are very many people who haven't yet experienced it fully. Maybe you want to. Maybe you're looking for a rich life. Well, today, not only here, but in our Connect groups and then here tonight, we're going to think about that. We're going to challenge each other to understand what it means to be rich, to have a richness of life, and how to go about getting it. So, let's think about what it means to be rich. Rich is not defined by what you have. It is defined by who you are. Now, that's the definition for being rich that I want us to think about today. That's the definition that is going to guide our thoughts. It's about who we are that makes us rich, not what we have. Let's consider that together. Number one, people in general agree with that. I think you could say, if you talk to people enough, they eventually would land on the idea that being rich, real richness of life, is found in the character of the person and in the nature of the life that you're living. I found it interesting. These kinds of things interest me because it starts here and they have a long-range view. 1938. A division of family studies at Harvard University began following a number of people, and they planned to do it for 3 generations. And so they had this survey going. They had this study of people and their children and their grandchildren asking the question, what is it that makes a person rich? And what is it that brings real happiness? Well, here is what they have found. I didn't see when the survey ended, but I can sort of imagine it's been pretty close to our time, because my parents were born in the 30s, and then I was born in 1959, and now their grandchildren born in the 80s. So maybe the study ended in the 90s, I'm not sure, or maybe they went on to great-grandchildren into the 2000s. But here's what they found. After being with these people for all of these years, they said, number one, career success does not equal happiness. Career success does not equal happiness. Now, I'm not saying, neither were they, that we should not find career success. That's not the point. In fact, I would suggest that the Bible would say that we ought to be successful. We have to take care of ourselves. We're supposed to honor our families by caring for them. And then look at all of the people in Scripture who were financially successful. So they weren't saying that. They were saying, if your happiness is tied to career success, you're going to find eventually that you're not really happy. Number two, they said you need to appreciate relationships at work. Appreciate relationships at work. I think these two are connected because of this. If all of us are simply trying to be happy by having career success, we may not think about the people we're working with, not in a way that makes relationships happen. But it might end up being that we use people to get to our success. It's not the way to be happy. So I think they were saying, when you're at work and you're doing what you ought to be doing, create relationships. Because in creating those relationships, you're creating an environment around you, an environment that adds to your richness of life. And finally, third, here's what they said. Value experiences over possessions. That makes a lot of sense. When you think back over your life, what are the things that come to your mind? Are the first things that pop in your mind the day you bought your brand new car? Or is it the day your children were born? When you think back over your life, does it first occur to you the number of houses that you have purchased in your life? Or do you remember the times in those houses and the children and the grandchildren and the neighbors and the friends and the things that you did in those houses? When you think back over your life, don't you remember the trips? The things that you experienced? And aren't those the most prevalent memories in your life? Those people said that experiences are so much better than possessions. And I think we can all understand that. So people agree That being rich is about being who we are, not what we have. And guess what? You would expect it. The Bible agrees with that too. The Bible agrees with the idea that who you are is more important than what you have. Psalm 37 in verse 16. The little that a righteous man has is greater than the riches of many wicked people. Why? Because righteousness is a treasure. Righteousness makes you rich. It is righteousness that adds to your life. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 22, the wise man said, the blessing of the Lord brings great riches, and he adds no sorrows with it. Now, he's not saying that in the Christian life or in the faithful life there's never sorrows. But here's what he's saying. When you're blessed by the Lord and you live in those blessings, you won't be sorry that you're there. When you understand, when we know who the Lord is and we appreciate what He's given and what He's done, we will not be sorry that we chose that path. Proverbs writer in chapter 13 and verse 7 said, there are those who make themselves rich but have nothing, and those who make themselves poor, and they have great riches. There is richness that is found in poverty. I'm not talking about having no money in the bank and having other people to have to feed you. I'm talking about what Jesus said in the Beatitudes, when He talked about the blessedness of humility, the blessedness of being able to free yourself from this life. That's the kind of poverty that God knows will make us rich. And it was Jesus who said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven or on earth, where moth and rust corrupt, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not corrupt, where thieves do not break in and steal. Real treasures, real richness comes from having imperishable treasures. Therefore, sell what you have. Provide bags that cannot be broken. In Luke 13 or Luke 12 and 33, Jesus is not saying to become penniless. But what He is saying is this: if you want to be rich, and money is getting in the way, possessions are getting in the way of feeling and living a rich life, then sell it off. Get rid of it. I was driving, I know I have the memory of where it was. I was driving down the interstate in St. Louis with a friend of Rebecca's and mine who had been doing very well in a restaurant that he owned. And he was really making money. And all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, I prayed today to the Lord, if this restaurant and this money starts getting in the way of me being a faithful person, God, take it away. Can you pray that? Can I pray that? Can I look at the things of my life and turn them over to God to say, take them all away if they're getting in the way of me having a rich life? That's a blessed way to live. That's a peaceful way to live. That's a faithful way to live. Look at our passage of Hebrews chapter 11. I want to give you three things that we find in this text. Three things that will help us create an environment where we have the greatest opportunity to have a rich life. If today you're looking for a rich life, richness of life, what are you going to do? We're going to do what Moses did. We're going to be who Moses was. We're going to have what he had. Here's number one. You need to have a family of faith. You want to have a rich life? Have a family of faith. Look at what is said about Moses and his parents. Look at verse 23. They said he was a beautiful child. I don't think they were saying, look at this newborn baby. He's so purty. They knew who they were. They had an understanding of who he was. Maybe they didn't know, I don't know how they could, that he was going to lead God's people out of Egypt. I'm not sure they knew that. But they saw in him the potential of life. What do you see in your children? Do they have potential? Do you see and recognize their power for a great life? And are you telling them that? Or are you feeding them this positive thing that says, I want you to be successful. I want you to be rich. I want you to have a life that is great, and I'm going to help you do it. That's what his parents did. He had a rich family. You need to have a rich family. Number two, they were not afraid of what the king said. Richness in family comes from confidence in who you are and confidence of where you are, confidence of what you have, confidence of what you can be, and it has nothing to do with what laws are made by people in power. Doesn't matter. There are faithful families living under tyrannical regimes in this world because they're not afraid. They have the Lord. It doesn't matter the political situation. If you have a faithful family, you have a security, you have a home base, you have a grounding, you have a foundation that will get you through all of that. If you don't yet have a family of your own, you're looking to have that in your children someday, decide right now, we're going to be a family of faith. And if you're in a family right now, and your family is not exactly fully faithful, decide today, we're going to be a family of faith. Because when you are a family of faith, so many of the problems that we face can be handled. I see too many people who have too many problems. I'm trying to help. And a lot of them come from the family situations in which they are. And they don't have a good, firm foundation. Number 2, make faithful choices. Make choices in faith. Look what Moses did. He said, I'm not going to be known as Pharaoh's daughter or son. Not going to do it. I'm not going to be the grandson, as it were, of the Pharaoh anymore. Why? He knew who he was. He made a choice. He looked at his people. His people were suffering under the bondage of the Egyptians, and he said, that's who they are. Those are my people. Here's the Pharaoh family where I was raised. I choose them over this. Make choices in faith. It is obvious that Moses knew who he was, because in those few years, maybe up to 3, where his birth mother was his caretaker in behalf of Pharaoh's daughter, up until he was about 3, she taught him everything he needed to know in 3 years, that when he became an adult, he could make proper choices. Children start learning long before we think they can. You start teaching your children now, instilling values in them that will lead them to a rich life right now. Don't wait. And as adults, we teach them by making choices in faith ourselves. When you have a choice to make in your life, is it your first thought, what's the faithful thing to do? When faith is the ground from which you make your choices, the chances of having a rich life go up. And finally, third, like Moses, live in faith. I like verse 26. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. Did Moses see Jesus? I think the writer is saying he understood faith so well that through faith he saw the plan of God, even though he didn't know the specificity. Did he know that Jesus was going to come and die for the world? I think not. But his faith led him to accept that God's plan, whatever it is going to work. And I'm going to live with that plan. I'm not even sure he knew all the details, but he knew enough. He knew enough to live in faith. So he forsook Egypt. I wonder if he ever thought, Lord, if the treasures of Egypt take me away from your faithfulness, then take it all away. Because that's the choice he made. That's exactly what happened. Can we make that choice today? Today, I want to close with the reading of this one verse. You know that the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, though he was rich, for your sakes he became poor, that through his poverty you might become rich. 2 Corinthians 8, verse 9. Real prosperity is found in the poverty of Jesus. And it's about the poverty of humility and the richness of a full life of faith that tells me what choices to make and is supported by a family like this. Today, everybody here is rich. Just look around and see what we have. This is a rich, prosperous environment spiritually. Are you a part of it? Are you connected to it? You can be today. Believing in Jesus and repenting of sin, you can be immersed into Jesus Christ, where the richness of life is. Or you can come back to Him if the riches of the world have gotten in the way. That's why we're here, for you today, while we stand and sing together.
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. Thanks for listening.